we get into the deconstructing part of this video, let me tell you a little bit about the theory we're going to be deconstructing. So, our theory is William Perry's intellectual and ethical development theory. So here are some things that you should know. Perry was born in Paris, France in the early 1900s. He worked at Harvard and served as the director for the university's Bureau of Study Council in the 50s and 60s. While there, he and some of his co-workers performed a longitudinal study that engaged in research, examining how students interpreted and made meaning of the teaching and learning process. From this research, Perry and his colleagues formulated what he describes as the typical course of development of students' patterns of thought and unfolding views of the world. Not surprisingly at all, only men were involved in the study. So, what is the theory? Perry believes that all college students go through 9 positions of moral and mental development. The 9 positions of intellectual development are basic duality, full dualism, early multiplicity, late multiplicity, contextual relativism, pre-commitment, commitment, challenge to commitment, and post-commitment. If you're wondering why they are called positions and not stages, there are a couple reasons for this. First, position makes no assumption about duration. Second, since individuals may demonstrate some range in structures at any point in time, position can represent the locus of a central tendency or dominance among the structures. And finally, position is consistent with the point of view individuals use as a lens to examine the world. Finally, Perry was able to condense these 9 positions into 4 stages. The first stage is dualism. This is where the students are able to view the world dichotomously. So, black and white, good versus bad. Then they move on to the multiplicity stage. This is where diverse views are thought of as equally beneficial. Next, we have the relativism stage. This is where thinkers acknowledge that some opinions are of little value, and it's okay for people to disagree with others' opinions. And finally, we go into commitment. This is where students shift from cognitive to ethical development and begin to formulate their own views of the world.
So I'm going to start with flow of power. So to what degree does this theory address power, how it flows, and in what ways it shapes experiences and relationships? So starting off, Perry is a white man. He's the Harvard president. So this kind of has to do with social location. He's far above and more accomplished than the subjects that he's talking about. Another thing is that he used white male Harvard students as subjects. So they're technically also above the typical student. So this has to do with social location and the fact that it's not a universal experience for everyone that he says that the study should apply to. And then the last one, it does address the idea that a continuum is better than stages. So this does fit in with the ideology that modern student affairs respects. So the second tool that I'm going to focus on is commodification. So where does this theory dehumanize people and diminish knowledge by maximizing productivity? So the first one that I noticed was in the deflections. So especially escape, it kind of shows a value in a speed of development for success. And this kind of says, like with stocks of knowledge, it assumes that cognitive development is critical for success. And that kind of defines success as like how well people are producing. So that's commodification. And then the second thing I noticed was Neffelkamp and Wittig and many other researchers past this created different theories, but they created the mid. And this was a production-based way of measuring this theory. So production-based screams commodification. And then the last one is that research using these frameworks like the mid, they emphasize on career development a lot rather than all student development. So this kind of goes against the student affairs values of valuing student development just as much as educational or career-based success.
Using the ideological critique tool, we ask, does this study question the underlying core beliefs of a theory, attempting to identify what is positioned as normative? It talks about 9 positions as levels or lenses through which the student looks at the world. These are steps and not playgrounds for development. Perry argues that development occurs in movement from one position to the next and not so much within a position, apart from the lateral growth it offers. This can be linked to stocks of knowledge in that development is considered as linear, which is a lot of worldviews might refrain from. Ideology and social location play a part as well, as this is something he's proposing to be true from his own assumptions and social identity he holds. Using the same set of critiques, I argue that he only considers 4 concepts of duality, multiplicity, relativism, and commitment as foundations and uses them as knobs to check the student. Here we see stocks of knowledge and ideology play a role. Meaning making as a concept is also averse of the fact that not all humans have the same capability to realize cognition. The specially able populace is left out of this discussion. Ideology and social location are seen here, but also hegemony, as he embraces the common sense belief that everyone is fully able. The last critique I'd offer is that he only considers students of a traditional college age and not non-traditional routes. All of ideology, hegemony, and social location play into this critique. Talking about willful blindness, we ask, does this study question how and why people, theorists, researchers, etc., may remain purposefully unaware to avoid responsibility and replicate hegemonic norms? The consideration of minority groups is seen, but no other work or research has been proposed. This is an example of hegemony in that it serves into the power, but also social location, as it overlooks some populations not in the author's purview. We talk about the commitment process involving making choices, decisions, and affirmations, but oftentimes students might not have the choice to opt out of a situation based on their social location. We can see stocks of knowledge play here as the author does not identify this social construction. The last point I put forth is of other social identities like gender, economic background, nationality, amongst others, that are not considered in the theory. Stocks of knowledge, hegemony, and social location all play a role in this understanding.
With the observations we have made, I've grouped together some of our deconstruction into 5 key areas to focus on after reviewing Perry's theory. So here's what comes next. First, research should be done to explore the presence of fluidity within each position, as students are likely to fall on a range within each one. Second, more studies should be completed to expand our understanding of the comparable development of different minoritized groups and groups of different cognitive ability in order to more accurately reflect campus populations. Our third and fourth points are closely related, as it is crucial that we continue to address the current presence of power and privilege within institutions, as well as their impact on perspectives and realities of minoritized students. We need to have a better understanding for how the environment students are in contribute to their intellectual development, showing that development is not solely an internal process. Lastly, future research should incorporate behavioral observation to address the first 4 points that were mentioned on this slide.